Welcome to the Money Mindset and Marketing Podcast with me, Alan Miles. And today I am joined by none other than John Lewis. For those of you that are my English listeners, this is not John Lewis, the shop. This is John Lewis, who is an incredible coach from the US. He runs a company called The Virtual Legacy. Hey, John, how you doing? Great to have you on the show.
Doing great, Alan. Thanks for having me here. And yeah, I was very surprised to find that out as well, that I had a department store named after me in England. So all my English friends are like, oh my gosh, John Lewis. I was like, oh, I didn't know it's such a big deal.
Yeah, it was one of the first conversations we had. And that was one of the reasons I remember opening the very first message that you sent me. I was like, that's funny. I've just had a message from somebody called John Lewis. So I'll see what he's saying. And it was straight up value at that point. But for everyone who doesn't know you, can you give us a little bit of background on yourself? Like, what is it that you do? How did you get to this point? Give us a little bit of context of who you are.
Absolutely. Do you want the short version or do you want the full in-depth story?
We'll take the intermediate version.
Intermediate version. Okay, so I'm from the US for the English listeners, as he said, but I'm more specifically from New Orleans, Louisiana, born and raised. For those of you that don't know, New Orleans, great place for food, very poor place if you want to start a business and get that up and running, and not very entrepreneurial minded people down there for the most part, as far as online cutting edge technology and things of that sort. So the environment I grew up in, to say the least, didn't foster becoming an entrepreneur. And where I grew up, you really make it out one of two ways. It's either sports or entertainment. So for me, the majority of my life, I chose the sports route. I played basketball all the way up until college, played at Baylor in Texas, and finished at a Division II in Lubbock, Texas. But unfortunately, was only blessed to be 5'8", so didn't really make it past that point. But learned a lot in the process and met my first business mentor actually while I was playing college basketball. He happened to be a huge college basketball fan, and in exchange for me transferring to Lubbock, he offered to mentor me. So I lived with this guy for about a year, like drove his car around town. His assistant, his chef would cook meals for us. I'm like, man, this is the life that I want to live. Like, that was the time that I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur for the rest of my life, and I would play that sport the rest of my life. So got started on the journey. I was like, this has to be easy enough. Just live with this guy. He's making 60K a week. I'm like, okay, I'm going to crush this. So I dive in pretty confident, and business just slaps me in the face. I thought I had it all figured out. Started at 19. Found myself door knocking on the streets of Florida on the beach, like 95-degree weather and a button up, knocking on doors, trying to get some business out of it. So from 19 to 25, I really struggled in the world of business. And there's many things I'm sure we're going to talk about on this podcast that I had to figure out and later came to figure out, but I just really couldn't wrap my head around it. And I know a lot of listeners probably feel the same way if you're just getting started in your journey. I just remember feeling like, man, I have all the information in the world. I bought all these courses. I feel like I should be having success. I'm doing exactly what they told me I should be doing. But things that are conceptual are different than application. So I had the concepts down, but I didn't really have how to actually execute and apply those things down. So at 25 years old, I built my first successful company, which was actually a little off script in the world of disaster recovery. I built my construction company to 7 figures. But one of the main things that I had to do in order to do that was I had to put competent people in their place and give them the tools and systems that they needed to be successful. And because it was construction and not marketing and not the online space, I was forced to do that because I suck at picking up a hammer. You don't want me nailing anything in your house. So I was forced to find competent people and give them what they needed to be successful. So when I got back from doing that and from building that company, I applied that same logic to my online marketing company. And seemingly overnight, after 6 years, went from hardly making anything to having 6-figure months with my company. So, but that's part of what it took, was putting the right people in place and giving them the tools and systems they needed to be successful.
So how did you transition then from construction to what it is that you do at the Virtual Legacy?
Yeah, so I never left the marketing world. Even as I was building that construction company, I still was building my marketing company. It's just that it wasn't successful. So, I mean, I was doing all the work, had laid the foundation, had a few clients. So it wasn't like I had nobody, but definitely nothing on a major scale. So it allowed me to go from making a couple thousand, like I said, thousand here, thousand there to 6-figure months was putting those systems, processes, teams in place. But another thing that really helped me to make that transition, and you've been through this, having gone through my program, was the roadmap to riches.
Yep.
And in that concept, I talk about communicating your offer in terms of how you're going to get your prospect from point A to point B, instead of talking about what I call vehicles. So for the listeners, vehicles just is your course. I do one-on-one coaching. I do group coaching. Most people, when they communicate what they have to offer, that's how they talk. But your prospect doesn't care about that. All they care about is, how are you going to get me from point A to point B to help me achieve the result that I want to achieve? And so when I changed my terminology from, hey, I can help you get on social media, I can help you on Facebook, I can help you to build your Instagram page, no one cares about that. When I started talking about, I can help you to scale your real online education business from zero to $20,000 a month, and here's how I did it, and here's the breakdown of that steps that it took to get there, now I had people's attention and I had their ear. So speaking in terms of the roadmap instead of speaking in terms of the vehicle was a huge deal for me as well.
Okay, that's interesting. So what would you say to somebody? Because obviously we've both been through our fair shares of ups and downs in business, and kind of, like you say at the beginning, business slapping you in the face. What would you say to somebody who naturally, coaches they're not used to the sales side of a business? Like, they maybe have worked in a coaching capacity, and it's a very different energy, isn't it? You then transition over to sales or marketing, and all of a sudden you get hit pretty hard with people saying no, people saying all kinds of stuff to you. No's the nice one.
Right.
And it's that thing of, what would you say to somebody who's feeling a little bit down, a little bit out, a little bit like, how do I find a way to make this work? Maybe I should just stop.
Mm-hmm.
How would you pick yourself back up, or how would you say to get somebody to pick themselves back up?
Yep. So business is a very interesting balance of emotion and logic. And when it comes to sales, you have to, when you're not on a sales call, when you're just analyzing it from a high level perspective, you have to be almost all the way on that logic side. And what I teach people, and this was something I had to master as well, is getting really clear on your KPIs, which just stands for key performance indicators. Key performance indicators are things that you can control in the sales process. I can't control whether someone gives me money. Sure, there's things I can do to help that happen, but at the end of the day, if they don't have money in their pocket, I can't create money. So like, at the end of the day, I don't truly have control of collecting money, but I have control of everything leading up to that point. I have control of how many people we reach out to. I have control of how many people we get on a discovery call. I have control of how many people we get on a strategy call. Those are factors that I can control. So from an emotional perspective, you need to pour all of your focus into those metrics that you actually can control, knowing that if I do enough of those metrics, it's going to lead to the result that I'm looking for. So that's what people mean when they just say, oh, don't worry about the no. That's great. But if you just think the no's are never going to stop and you don't see light at the end of the tunnel, it's really hard to not take those no's personal or not get discouraged. But if you know, okay, I need 10 people on a strategy call to convert one, well, now there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You know what you're working towards. You know, if I get to 10 people, I'll have a sale. If I get to 20 people, I'll have 2 sales. So getting really, really clear on those numbers and what it takes to have success helps you out a lot as far as dealing with those no's. And like I said, seeing that light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, great. I like that a lot. And we talk a lot about lead indicators and lag indicators, which is ultimately aligns to the same thing. Focus on the things you can control, not on collecting the money, because the money will come. And I think that's the thing. A lot of people in all parts of life, not just business, but also when you look at things like weight loss or anything in particular, they always focus naturally on the end result of, or I want to make £100,000 or I want to lose £100 in weight. It's about actually focusing on just doing those steps in a sequential order. So you can't simply just jump straight to the end of it all. So how did you create a solid mindset to be able to get these things figured out? I know obviously you had some good mentors around you and those kind of things, but that could have gone one of two ways. You're seeing somebody pulling in 60 grand a week, and then you go and try it and you don't pull in 60 grand a week. You're struggling to pull in a couple of grand here or there. How did you create your own process? Was it a morning process? Is it a daily framework you work by? What was it that cemented it in to allow that logic to really rise to the surface rather than the emotion?
Right. So I'm going to answer that in two ways because I have to answer it honestly.
Yeah.
And the honest answer is that at first I had no system or formula. I didn't know what I was doing at that point. I couldn't attach a title to it. Now, later on, I can. I
Mhm.
think a lot of it, the root of it was in my upbringing, in being a 5'8" person, choosing to play the sport of basketball where everybody's like 6'5", 6'8", 7 foot, and hearing from
Wow.
my own coaches that I wouldn't be successful. I wouldn't be able to play in college on a scholarship. There was no way possible. I wouldn't be able to dunk. And at 5'8", I end up dunking. So my whole life in sports and really in life in general was just all about defying the odds and doing things that people told me I couldn't do. And it got to the point where that started to drive me and motivate me, which is a whole nother topic I can talk about why that probably shouldn't be the driving force, but you have to do what it takes to get where you want to be.
Mm.
And I would pull on that force so strongly of hearing those voices of people saying, you won't be successful, you're too short, you're too this, you're too that. And then when I successfully did that and proved them wrong, I was like, well, I will never be defined by the limitations that people try to put on me ever again. So naturally, when I got into business, I had already, and it's funny, I'm listening to David Goggins right now. I don't know if you've heard any of his stuff, but he talks a lot about callousing your mind and
Mhm.
really getting hard. And I think that that process through sports really allowed me to do that. So by the time I got to business, I was like, here we go again. I'm on the wagon again. A lot of people probably doubted me, even though probably nobody was even paying attention to me. I convinced myself in my head that I had doubters. I had people that were wishing failure upon me, and there was no way that I was going to quit. I was going to go until I was successful. And really, I didn't give myself any other options. And there's a book actually that was very inspirational in my entrepreneurial journey. It's the very first book that my business mentor gave me, and it's Think and Grow Rich. And it's a
Yep.
staple in the entrepreneurial world. But in that book, there's a chapter on decision. And there's this army general of this little tiny army that's sailing over to fight this humongous army. And they get to the island. And the very first thing that he does is he turns around and he burns the ship.
Mhm.
And his people are freaking out. They're like, man, what are you doing? We're going to die. And he's like, yeah, we have two options. We can either win or die, but there will be no retreat. And that army, that little tiny army, ends up defeating this huge army. But the reason for it was because of his decision. His decision was, I don't want to have any retreat. I don't want to have any way to turn back. This is the decision that we made. We're either going to win or die trying. And when we make those types of decisions in life, when it becomes not, I'll try out this business, I'll test it out and see how it works. When it comes to the point where you're like, this is my decision, and no matter what, I'm going to make sure it happens, then life, the world, your mind, everything finds a way to make that happen because you've made a decision that you will. So I think that it's a combination of those two things. I made a decision, and when I make a decision, I don't look for retreat at all. And number two, I had already calloused my mind against some of the things that were destined to come my way and determined I would overcome them.
It's interesting. It's interesting hearing that kind of stuff because success always leaves clues. And when you look through and like kind of most entrepreneurs, they study and they listen to lots of stuff and whatnot. But it was as you were talking before you even mentioned David Goggins' name, I was like, this sounds like his type of mindset that he would be telling you to like put. You can imagine him in a YouTube video, like running with his top off, being like, store it in your mind, store it in your mind for when you need it, and then pull it out. And it's the same as Michael Jordan as well. In the I was watching The Last Dance. Is it called The Last Dance?
Last Dance. Yeah.
And he talks about, and some of his teammates talk about, he used to create these hypothetical situations so that he had actual animosity with somebody so could perform in the moment. And it got me thinking a lot about kind of my background and kind of where I get my impetus from. And I kind of categorize it as underdog syndrome. Like you like to be that person who is the underdog so that you have a reason to prove people wrong. Because I mean, I'm only like 5'9", 5'10" if I stand up really straight. But it's that thing of having this almost a chip on your shoulder to be able to prove everyone wrong. And I know that it's those kind of things, values that I think we definitely share, where we've had conversations in the past, that we definitely have alignment there of having to do things sometimes the hard way, like knocking on 100,000 doors to get your answer. Because sometimes, even though the things are there in front of you, in hindsight, you look back and you go, well, I maybe could have done this in a little bit of an easier way. Actually, you needed that lesson. It was the sequence of events that caused that toughness to be built, so that in the moments when all of a sudden, if you'd have just had an easy ride and you'd have immediately started to make 20, 30, 40K a week, we wouldn't have known how to manage those situations, and it wouldn't have had the depth of character to be able to manage them. The other thing I thought that was interesting is I was listening to Tony Robbins earlier today, and he mentioned the word decision directly. And he said a decision, it comes from it's a Latin word, but it means to cut away. Like, so like incision is a cut, decision is to cut away. And that isn't, I can't remember the exact words you just used, but it was almost word for word. And it was a case of, instead of just trying it a little bit. And I think this is one of the areas when people try a business, they want to start something, they use that word, I'm going to try, I'll give it a go. Right. I'll see what happens. But that generally very rarely leads to success. It's about making that commitment to go, there's only one way, and that's forward. Like, I'm making the decision that this has to work. And it's those moments when people hit those red lines that I see that they go, well, I don't have any option now, I have to do it. And it's almost like that the upbringing you had in Louisiana, you were like, well, there's one or two ways out of here, sports or entertainment. I'm going to try sports. Right. But now actually sports isn't the route. Now I have to find another way. And it almost led you to that point. It's interesting. So what would you give as some tips to people? Like, let's say 5 tips. If they were wanting to grow an online business, what would you say are the 5 key things they need to do to start getting some forward progress?
Do you mind if I do something for my logical people first and then get back to that question?
Go for it.
Because I think I answered your last question from what logical people would consider an emotional perspective. But for those people, they don't believe in emotional solutions. So from a logical perspective, based on your last question, I would say the key to being successful is to schedule out what you're going to do on a daily basis and then just consistently show up. So if you don't believe in like making that decision and having that passion and emotion behind it to never quit, then the logical solution to that is scheduling it in your day every single day and not failing to show up. So every single day, every morning, I would wake up and this is when I first got started, 5 o'clock in the morning, wake up, morning routine, getting my mind right, motivation. I know a lot of people say motivation is crap. I'm not a believer of that. And the reason isn't because of the hype that you feel from listening to it. It's more about the words that are being said. I believe whatever you listen to consistently, you start to believe. So me listening to that stuff every single morning, I start to believe that. I can recite those words now, and it now becomes a part of me. So all that stuff, I used to schedule that into my day, and every single day I'd be on it. Every single day I'd do the work that I need to do. And even on days when I didn't feel like showing up, I'd show up. So if you want a logical solution that's outside of emotion, just schedule it in your day every single day and show up. But back to your question about 5 things that people would need to do to start an online business. I would say in this order, this is what you need to do. Step number 1 is choosing a niche. So a lot of people fail to do this. I know this is something that I failed to do because I was like, I want to serve everybody. I was like, man, my offer is so good. You know, we just get in our head and we just think we have the best things in sliced bread. So it's for everybody. I can't choose with just one person. And I did that for 5 years unsuccessfully until I finally said, you know what, I think I'm going to listen to all these gurus that say you have to choose a niche. And from choosing a niche and honing down on that niche, it allowed me now to become a specialist instead of a generalist. And people work with specialists. There's so many people out there doing exactly what you're doing. If you're not talking to a specific audience, you're talking to nobody. So it's very, very imperative that you start off by choosing a niche. You can always expand and start helping others after you become successful, but you have to start narrow. And I didn't realize how important this was until I understood how it applied to marketing. Because in my marketing strategy, if I'm niche, now I can form messaging and scripts and offers that cater specifically to that audience. And it truly makes it a no-brainer to have a conversation with me, get on a sales call with me, and eventually buy my offer. But without being so specific, it would be impossible for me to reach out to someone outbound and have them interested in whatever it is I have to offer. So that's step number 1, is choosing a solid niche. Step number 2 is your offer. offer has to be bulletproof. It has to be relevant to the audience that you're serving. I should be able to clearly see the value, and I should be able to clearly see how you're going to get me from my pain, where I'm struggling today, over to my pleasure, my desired outcome, and where I want to be. If you can't communicate your offer in those terms of how it gets me from pain to pleasure, then I'm probably not going to make a buying decision. So that's step number two. Step
Mhm.
number three, for building their online business, I would say it should be organic marketing. If it's a brand new business, and this comes from someone who was a part of a company that spent over 10 million in paid advertising, generated over 70 million. So I understand that world as well. I also understand organic because we built our company 6-figure months all organically. And for a brand new business, you don't truly know your audience yet. You don't truly know your messaging yet. You don't truly know that your offer converts yet. It makes no sense, in my opinion, to spend tens of thousands of dollars on paid advertising with a process and a system that you don't even know if it works or not yet. So the best way to get out of the gate is to start organically. You can have those conversations one on one. You can get real life feedback. You can hear people's objections and learn to overcome those objections. It takes the process a little slower, sure, but it's better to do it that way and build a solid business foundation where you're generating consistent leads based on something that will be there for the rest of time, which is talking and having a conversation with people, versus dumping money into the next gimmick, scheme. And even if it works temporarily, it crashes because you don't really know how you got to success in the first place. So that's step number three, in my opinion, would be organic marketing. Step number four would be sales. So I see this a lot as well. Some people, they do a great job of marketing and generating leads, but they don't have a solid sales system on the back end in place. And that's just like throwing money and time down the drain. You can spend all the time in the world on marketing. You could spend money till you're blue in the face. But if you don't have a solid sales system on the back end to actually convert those leads, then you won't be successful. And then five is just fulfillment. And honestly, at the beginning of my career, I used to think sales and marketing were the hardest parts. But as my career has progressed, it kind of shifts. And I think it'll always shift back and forth. You'll always reach new levels, but it shifts to fulfillment now. And how do I fulfill in the best way possible for my clients? So now I have the sales and marketing down. I've worked on that for like a decade. So now it's like, okay, let me really master this fulfillment process. And as of lately, that's where I found myself, is just diving completely into fulfillment and how do I make my experience completely different than everybody else out there. But those are the 5 steps. So starting off with choosing your niche. Second, developing your offer. Third, I would suggest organic marketing, but if not, you need some form of lead generation. Number 4, sales process. Number 5, fulfillment.
Yeah, I agree. I think organic marketing's a fundamental part of the process. And I think it's something that a lot of people overlook. They sometimes will just do 1 or 2 sales to validate their
Mhm.
offer and then they'll move on from it. In your opinion, bearing in mind how much you'd spent on ads in the past, what do you think is a good revenue level for somebody to aim for before they even consider looking at other forms of marketing? Let's say, for example,
Yeah.
have a 3K offer.
hmm So as far as revenue on a monthly basis, I'll
Yeah.
give 2 answers. One is where you can get away with it, and one is where I suggest. So you can get away with it once you start hitting like 20K months. I still wouldn't suggest it. Like for us right now, we're about to, for the first time ever in my business, I'm about to kick off paid advertising, and our baseline is going to be like 6K a month. So to even be relevant, because you have to realize when you're doing paid advertising, it's not just you reaching out to an audience, it's also you competing for media space with other people.
Mm.
So if your competitors are out there spending 100K a month, a million a month, and here you come trying to spend $100, $500 a month, your ad, I mean, that money's going in the trash can. People
Yeah.
might not even ever see your ad. So if you're at 10K a month, you look at me, I'm starting at 6K per month just to start testing. Like you're not going to be competitive there. You're spending over 50% of your income on ads just to be relevant. So it
Mm.
makes absolutely no sense if you're at that level to start with paid advertising. 20K, you can get away with it, but you're going to want to have success really quickly or it's going to start to bleed really quickly.
Mm.
So a few months at 20K months and you're spending 6K a month on ads with no results, same scenario, you find yourself, man, I just wasted all this money on ad spend and now you're still at ground zero. So I would say once you get around the 50K mark is a more comfortable place to start really spending money on ads. Now you have disposable income where you can do some testing. It doesn't have to work right away for you to have success. And you can really see the process through until you develop a paid system that works. for me, and I think this is the same for you, me and you had this conversation. We were like, we're not going to do it until we hit 100K months consistently.
Yeah.
And I can say that's what we did here. Until I hit 100K months, multiple 100K months, I didn't even entertain paid advertising, because the truth is you can scale to 100K months organically. I've done it. I know you've hit that
Yeah.
mark. I know I have another client. She's serves registered dietitians in the health niche. She's doing 150 to 200K per month all organically. So I've seen over and over again how you can get to 100Ks per month all organically.
I think that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Is that so often there's a lack of belief that it can be done, because the people who do paid advertising speak so loudly trying to sell their courses to teach you how to do paid advertising,
Right.
that it just drowns out the noise. And it always takes me back to those things of like, that, well, it's not possible. It's not possible. Of course it's possible. There was one point in time they didn't think it was possible to run a 4-minute mile. Now
Right.
it's very heavily done. There was somebody, I'm sure lots of people told you growing up, you'll never dunk. Like, I mean, that's
Right.
a hell of a
Absolutely.
vertical leap. Like,
Yeah.
it's a big leap, but it shows it can be done. And I think that's the thing that people sometimes, I don't know what your thoughts on this, but people coming into business, when they start to have some success, if they don't have, maybe they've never built a business before, you only know what you know at the end of the day, but they have the wrong perception of what to expect. They think, well, I'm making 10K a month or 20K a month. Now's the time. I'm now a big fish. But the reality of it is that actually, yes, you're now earning a good income if you're just used to earning the median income. But now actually you're still a very small fish in a gigantic pond that is the internet. And it's about understanding the perception and understanding the perspective of what comes next. So let's say, for example, we've got somebody's chosen their niche. They've got an offer which they think is a good offer that's going to really help people. They start organic marketing. I find a lot of people get very confused what organic marketing is. What, in your opinion, what is the best way to start organic marketing?
So there's two different strategies that I recommend. I'll just speak to our numbers. I can't speak for anybody else, and you might have mastered a few other things. I know that you're amazing on Facebook. For me personally, over 90% of my business comes from Instagram. So we did LinkedIn, we did Facebook, we did Instagram. I still 100% believe in Facebook as well. We just haven't focused on that strategy as much. So for us, it's really been Instagram. Like I said, over 90% of our business came from there. Some of the reasons I love Instagram is because, number one, it has a search engine similar to Google, which is through hashtags. So when I get really clear on my target audience, now I can come up with a criteria for who I'm looking for, and I can search that criteria through hashtags. So as an example, let's say I'm focused on nutritionists that want to start an online business. The very first thing I'm going to do is come up with my criteria. And this is actually something new that you might like, Alan, that we've done since we've worked together, is with that criteria, we look for things like, are they active on social? Are they actually posting videos that give value? The reason for that is we don't want to have to make a double sale. So when I'm coming up with that criteria, if they're already posting value to their audience, that tells me they're already in the process of doing what I want them to do. If they have a link in their bio that sends people somewhere, that's another check mark. It's like, okay, they're already trying to send people to an offer. They're already taking the actions I want them to take. So now I'm not trying to sell them on something brand new. Hey, you should get online and start coaching. I'm saying, hey, I can help you do what you're already doing better, which is a lot easier sale to make. So, we used to make a list of people that we want to reach out to. Now, instead of that list being filled with people that may or may not be interested in building an online business, now I have 50 people that are for sure already trying to build an online business. My numbers are going to look a lot better than trying to convince 50 people to build an online business. So our process as far as Instagram is, that's step number one, make a list of qualified people based on some criteria that we come up with. Step number two is an intro message. So we find a way to make initial contact with them. There's a customized way to do this, and there's a cookie cutter way to do this. The customized way gets way better numbers and way better results. And that comes from interacting with people based on the things that they post, based on things on their page, and really seeking to make that true connection coming out of the gate. The cookie cutter way, just from a numbers perspective, is just coming up with a generic opening message. Like I said, we've seen the relationship building aspect of it to work a lot better, but you can do it either way. We had a 100K month doing it the cookie cutter way as well before transitioning to more of a relationship building side of things. The L in our process stands for learning more about the person. So we have a conversation with them and we come up with what's called our CQP message, which just stands for compliment, question, pitch. So at some point in the conversation, I'm talking to you as Alan Miles. We're learning all about your life, your backstory. At some point in the conversation, I'm going to make the determination to switch to business. And at that point, I'm going to put in my CQP message, give you an honest compliment based on our conversation. Hey, Alan, very inspirational story. Sounds like you're doing amazing things in your life. I love your story of your huge weight loss journey. It shows a lot about your character and it shows a lot about your willing to be persistent. Question. So I would dive into a question that's relevant to what I'm trying to get across. Have you ever thought, I know that you're in the fitness space, have you ever thought of starting an online fitness brand instead of having to do everything in person? As an example, I'm just going to ask a thought-provoking question. And the pitch stands for, I really think if you took your talents online versus a physical location, you could significantly lower your overhead. And not only that, you could have a system that's scalable to 10K months plus, all online from the comfort of your home. Have you ever thought of that before? So that's our method. It's CQP, compliment, question, and pitch. And usually, if you've targeted the right audience and you're talking to the right person, there's very few people that fit that criteria that won't be interested in what you have to offer. And then from there, it's just booking them to an appointment.
I love it. This is literally like a masterclass, which is great. So my questions are all very specific, driving to get some real value out here for the listeners. This is really good stuff. So, okay. So to wrap things up, what would you say to anyone who has moved online? They've had a rough 6 months, 12 months. Maybe they've worked with a mentor and the mentor's not done a very good job, or it's a very generic program that just basically teaches them to cold DM a million people with a cookie cutter script, saying stuff that doesn't align with them really. What would you say to somebody who they still want to make it online, they're feeling bruised and battered? What bit of advice would you give them?
Well, I would say to get really clear on number one, make it your own. So I wouldn't rely on following the mentor to a T. I think the mentor can give you the strategy, but it's up to you to really make it your own and make sure that the messaging, the sales, all of that embodies who you are as a person and what your business stands for. So I would say take their methods, sure, but find a way to make their methods your own as well. And that comes with personalizing things. So, like I said, I just gave you an example with the CQP formula. It doesn't mean that you should copy and paste the exact same thing every single time. For every person you talk to, that's going to look a little different. So I would say make sure you distinguish the difference between methods that work and then making those methods your own and customizing it to really fit your brand. That's really where you take the leap and take things to the next level. If you do things cookie cutter, there's probably 150, 500 people out there doing the exact same thing as you. You're not really going to separate yourself from the competition. So that's a good start. That's a good foundation. Whatever you purchase, look at it as a piece in your treasure box, a tool in your toolbox. So it's not the end all be all. Every time I've invested in anything, I remember investing 8K to a coach just simply to help me with one script. That was one tool in my toolbox. He wasn't the solution to everything in my business, but by taking that, what I learned from him, it allowed me to implement that in my business and take another step. I remember investing 12K thinking I was going to get someone that helps me to generate leads. They only generated 2. And it's a pretty big name in the industry. I won't name the name of the person, but I got 2 leads literally the whole time. But I didn't complain, asking for a refund, anything like that. I was like, what can I take from what I paid for that I can implement into my business? So it was always just piecing things together. So don't look at any mentor as a savior. There's going to be very few people out there that can just come and save your business completely. But there's plenty of people out there that can give you another tool for your toolbox, and that can help you to take the next step towards being successful.
This has been awesome. So how can people get in touch with you? We'll put obviously all of the links inside the description, but if people are listening now, walking along, and they want to look you up, where's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, there's 2 places that you can stay in contact with me. Number one is my Instagram page. It's just The Athletic CEO. So go follow me there. I'll be posting a lot of content on my page and posting a lot of stories. And then next is my Facebook group. It's just the BYOB group. It's just build your own business. So if you want to plug into insight from me and from my team, those will be the two places to follow me and keep up with me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, John. It's been really, really valuable. Hopefully people have got a lot of value from this. If you haven't been taking notes whilst listening to it, go back, listen to it from the beginning, get a pen and paper, write notes. Something that I say every single time. I've literally written a whole page of notes as I've gone through this podcast. And it's one of those things that now's the thing. Take this information and take action on it. It's the real way to move forward. We'll be breaking this down in a training next week. Be sure to be in the Facebook group, the Mindset Marketing Facebook group. So you should already be a member of it. If not, visit the website, alamars.com. You can join it from there. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you all soon. Take care, guys.